Good day. AJ Mahara here with another comment response. This one could get us into some risky territory of angry codependents, people that haven't broken the trauma bond who might not have been with the borderline for, you know, a couple years or more, but they're still going to fire back at me because, Think about that before you do that, please, if you're inclined to do that, because your comment won't make it through the channel and it'll go nowhere. That's the main reason. So this commenter left a comment again. These shorts that I'm putting out are getting a lot of comments and a lot of interesting comments and really important comments. This commenter commented to a short, "You versus borderline, quote, object other, unquote," because that's what's going on in all these relationships too. So the borderline lack of object constancy, the borderline, even though for all of you out there who think they're so aware of everything they do and all why, they might be. Many cases, many instances of what they do, parts of what they do. Doesn't matter because what they do, there's no excuse for what they do. And you need to take care of yourself. Stop letting them do it to you, right? At some point, not that you were inviting them to do it to you, to abuse you, in other words. And there's no excuse to be made, no apology for BPD abuse. So, but the borderline object other, you versus the borderline object other, well, you can listen to the short actually, couldn't you? But the thing about that is that they're really not experiencing you for who you really are. And you do become, they have lack of object constancy, and you become the object other. What does that really mean? Well, they're not seeing you and they're not hearing you. And in effect, you become object other parent representation. And people with BPD more often than not will relate to you like you are mom or dad or both. It doesn't matter gender. And so the commenter said this on that short. "I feel like some of them," meaning people with BPD, "are actually just evil, though." Now, okay, because before everybody chimes in to agree with that, think about it. Think about the person you were with. Don't think about all people with BPD in the echo chamber. Now, I understand that some people might think the person with BPD they were with was evil. And if that's how you feel, and you share that on this channel in your experience of that person with BPD, that's perfectly fine here. I don't mean to sound like a censor. I don't want to censor things. But if you're going to go into how they all do the same thing, which this person is kind of into, then I'm just going to delete your comment. So keep it to your experience and the person with BPD that you experienced, and I'll respect your experience and however you feel about that, okay? But when you get into all of them are like this and that and the other thing, not really helpful to anybody, including people that comment that way. So the commenter says, "I feel like some of them," oh, it says some at least and not all. How about that? "Are actually just evil, though." Okay, well, the key thing I want to key in on here, and you might think this is just psychobabble, but it isn't. It's important. I feel like some of them are just evil, though. How many of you, when you think this, or actually when you feel this, when you want to say this about all people with BPD, or like this commenter, some, and some is still a stretch because you should stay focused. Don't be focused too much on the borderline, but you should keep your experience sharing, commenting. It will help you about the person with BP that you experienced, what all you experienced with and from, okay? And the "I feel" statement, watch out for that, because "I feel" statements can be highly cognitively distorted, not to say you weren't traumatized or hurt by the person with BPD, but when you feel like they're evil, if you feel like that one person was evil, that's different, because you might have reasons for that. But when you feel like some or all of them are evil, it's a feeling. It's not a rational thought. So pay attention to that also, because then you might want to ask yourself, if you're feeling that they're all evil or some are evil, and you're not just talking about the person you were with and the reasons you can give for that in your experience, then you might want to ask yourself, when I feel this way, that they're all evil, what am I really feeling? And then another question that would help, and if you're journaling, is what are the thoughts that are really creating this feeling? Because you want to make sure that you're keeping your part of things, that doesn't mean you're responsible for what the borderline did to you. But you want to make sure that you're staying aware of what you're thinking about them, which can be very helpful to people when you get into a healing and recovery process. And again, I'm out here to work with anybody that I resonate with. And so the commenter then says, like, we excuse so many BPD behaviors and offer explanations of what's going on in their heads. Well, okay, wait a minute, because there's more to the comment. Okay, who is the like we excuse so many BPD behaviors and other explanation and offer explanations of what's going on in their heads? This is true of many of you out there, and likely this commenter. And what is this but a function and an aspect of your responsibility for your codependency? In the trauma bond, this is what I take away from this commenter. Might not have meant it this way, but again, it's a point of speaking to codependent responsibility, not for the borderline's abuse, but for what you need to do for you now. So if you're thinking they're all or some of them are evil, etc., because like who has excused so many BPD behaviors and offered so many explanations for what's going on in their heads? Yes, people that give you misinformation online who can't possibly know what's going on in their heads, or because if they're not a person with BPD trying to explain that to you to whatever degree they understand it or not. So what I'm trying to say here is, like this commenter, there are so many of you out there. Are you going to be able to hear this right now? You're going to be able to like take this in before you react or respond or deny or whatever, even if you do that privately versus in a comment. It's all of you out there that have been with somebody with BPD, that have codependency, that are really hurting, that you're the ones who are making the excuses for BPD behaviors. You're the ones that do that ad infinitum, and some of you have done it for years in relationships, okay? And that's your codependency, and that's been hurting you too. I'm not saying the person with BPD, you're not responsible for what they did, but you are responsible for keep trying to make it okay, because you were taking their abuse and going back and trying to make it work and trying to make it work. And you, or many people out there with codependency, you are the ones who made all these excuses for BPD behavior and offered explanations for what's going on in their head. Or that's what you want most from other people. And many people with codependency right now still not having broken the trauma bond, even if you're months to a year to 2 years plus, 3 years, 5 years, etc., out of that relationship, but you're still watching all these videos and you're still commenting in the echo chamber because you haven't broken the trauma bond. And that is your responsibility right now. So no matter what the borderline did to you, that's not your responsibility. But breaking the trauma bond is your responsibility. So this commenter really calls out something that codependents need to hear more about. What you're doing when you're excusing their behavior, when you're making excuses for what's going on inside their head because of what you actually need and want from the person with BPD, and may still want to get back to, which is impossible and not healthy to pursue, and why you weren't able to get yourself out of the relationship when you were being traumatized, hurt, and abused, which is what the borderline is responsible for. So the offering of explanations and the excusing of BPD behavior is happening maybe only from people with BPD online, not all of them, some of them. And it's happening from you people out there with codependency that you've done all this excusing of their behavior and trying to decipher what's going on in their head. And do they know what they were doing? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? You need to be focusing on yourself. Commenter continues, so this is what's done with so many people with BPD, right? And then he says, or the commenter says, sorry, but we don't do this for people who have NPD or any social personality disorder. And they just get written off as narcissists and psychopaths or whatever, when in my experience, the stuff someone with BPD might do, being vindictive, is sometimes way worse. False equivalency, and something that this person can't assert in any meaningful, actual way because they haven't experienced, it seems from their comment, a narcissist or a psychopath. So it's a false equivalency. to go there. It's like, well, we make all these excuses for borderline behavior and we try to explain what's going on in their heads. You need to take responsibility for that commenter. You, if you're a codependent out there, you need to take responsibility for that. And then the person says, but we don't do this for people that have narcissistic personality disorder or antisocial personality disorder. They just get written off as narcissists and psychopaths, which I don't think that's wholly true with people that have been with a psychopath or person with ASPD or a narcissist. But this is what this person's limited personal view of a false equivalency argument that they can't even know what they're talking about here, because they're in such an egocentric place, understandably, of their own experience with the borderline, but they're claiming erroneously that people that have been with narcissists and psychopaths or people with ASPD are all just like whatever, as if they're not suffering, as if they're not trying to find out answers, as if they're not trying to figure out what's going on in the heads of narcissists and even psychopaths. It's a very ignorant comment. And when I say ignorant, I mean ignorant in the literal meaning of ignorant. It's somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. Somebody who's all, it's just false equivalency. It's somebody who can't know what they're saying about what do people who, have NPD or ASP do, or how do people respond to being hurt by them, traumatized by them. So he thinks that they all just get written off as being narcissists and psychopaths. That's not true. And it's kind of like it is a false equivalency. It's also a red herring fallacy. Many other things that aren't psychologically sound and that aren't logically sound that this person is doing, and sort of saying, well, it was hell over here, but it's like over there with these narcissists and psychopaths. They don't know where they speak at all on that part. And then they say, when in my experience, the stuff someone with BPD, now here's another interesting thing, might do versus what they have done, stuff that people with BPD might do. This person's really in a strange place. What people with BPD or someone with BPD might do while being vindictive is sometimes way worse. That's based on false equivalency, lack of logic, red herring fallacy, and probably like 12 other things I could name. It's illogical. It's nonsensical. It is just inaccurate. And since they don't know what happens, that people with NPD and ASP don't just get written off by people that are hurt and traumatized by them, then how can this person know at all to say what a borderline might do, or let's even say what a borderline maybe did or has done to you in vindictiveness, punishment, revenge, that somehow is way worse than a narcissist or a person with ASPD or a person who's a psychopath? No, I don't want that to play right now. Whoops, hit something by mistake. No, I don't really agree with that at all. That's not true. It's not even really something that it helps anybody to measure. Like if you've been really hurt and traumatized by somebody with BPD, and or they're still being really vindictive and they've done a smear campaign on you, maybe they falsely lied about stuff, which is horrific, about you, and now you're having legal issues, and that's just horrific abuse. All of that is horrible. Not making any excuse for any of that people with BPD can do vindictively. But is it worse than what narcissists do? Is it worse than what people with ASPD or psychopathic people do? What do you think if you care to give an opinion? Because I'm not going to answer that question, really. I mean, because it's all horrible. I don't know that people with BPD as often, some may, but I don't think they as often are to the outer limits of what many with malignant narcissism or psychopathy might do or be like. But I don't think it's helpful for anybody to try to measure, because if you've been with a borderline, you've been hurt and traumatized by a borderline, you've made all these excuses for them and you've their behaviors, and You've been offering all these explanations. They're trying to hear a bunch for why they do what they do, because you're still trying to get back there. You want your ex back. You want the relationship to work out. You're fighting with yourself, because these relationships are, in most of them, with not even diagnosed borderlines with all the patterns, diagnosed borderlines who won't seek treatment, untreated people with BPD. This is the codependent dilemma and nightmare. You are fighting so hard to get somebody back who never existed in the first place, excusing their behaviors maybe a lot, to a point, or maybe even now after the relationship is over, or you've been ghosted or discarded, or you're not sure which. Measuring pain or getting into false equivalency and saying, but these other people, nobody does that with them. And I think what a BPD might do is what this person said. So you might be somebody who's been really, really not only hurt, traumatized in relationship with somebody with BPD. Maybe now you're going through the smear campaign. Maybe now you're going through horrific, unexcusable abuse of false accusations, etc. Do you need to compare that to, well, if this was a malignant narcissist or psychopath, would this be worse? And the fact that people with BPD can and do this without comorbidity with NPD, without comorbidity with ASPD, though I'm not saying there aren't a small percentage of them out there who can be comorbid. Well, no, 40% can have some comorbidity with NPD. It doesn't mean that they're both borderline and narcissist, though. Can't fuse those two things automatically together, but they could have narc traits and BPD. And the same thing with some, like less than 1.2% of all women diagnosed with BPD may have some comorbidity or traits of psychopathy and or NPD. But 60% of people diagnosed with BPD, male or female, do not have comorbidity with anything else in cluster B. So, but I just think that this commenter, the comment is just a big sort of, I don't know, emotional dump of their own personal responsibility, even though they were obviously hurt by somebody. And they think that what they went through is the worst thing on earth you can go through. Well, okay, but that's somebody who doesn't have enough perspective yet. Did they go through something horrible? Maybe they did. Maybe you are as well. Maybe you have. Maybe you're afraid of that coming up. Maybe it's happening now. Maybe you're through that, but you went through that, and it's inexcusable, and no apologies for BPD abuse and within borderline personality disorder, because all people with BPD aren't the same. Some people have it more severely than others. It's like a spectrum, so to speak. And the point being that sometimes when they're doing the worst, traumatizing, abusive, lying, smear campaign, lying to police, it's horrific. I don't know that it would help you at all to try to compare how a narcissist would do that or how a psychopath, or what would be the difference, or because people with BPD do it. And that's what you need to be coping with. And that's what you better be in therapy to get help with. And again, you need to heal your codependency and break the trauma bond, no matter what iteration of horrific trauma and abuse you might still be in. Somebody with BPD still doing that to you. So this person is just a false equivalency argument, lack of logic, thinking only, thinking only of oneself, which is actually codependency needs to do that more. But with the perspective of not trying to compare what's happening to you and your pain to like everybody else's, like with narcissists and sociopaths. I mean, psychopaths. Sorry, I don't like the word sociopath. The term is ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. So this person is kind of saying, so they don't understand at all what's going on for others, and that's okay. So when I say focus on yourself now, yes, do focus on yourself. Out here to work with people that resonate with me, that want to get more of this healing work done and breaking the trauma bond, etc. And especially the more legal nightmare stuff and smear campaign that you're dealing with. I really help a lot of clients with that. As well as, they have to get lawyers, because I don't do any of that. I don't give legal advice, obviously. But so this person, so when I say focus on yourself, I don't mean be like this commenter, no offense to the commenter, being egocentrically focused on yourself to the point where you can't see anything else that could be happening to anyone else, so that you would get this view what do I call it? Like, this very myopic view, like this commenter has, that what's happening to you has got to be the utter worst in the world. Now, when it's happening to you, and even from a person with BPD and not a narcissist or comorbidity both and not a psychopath, it may damn well feel like the worst thing. It may be the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So when you focus on yourself, maybe you're going to feel some of that. And that's okay. That's healthy. But focus on yourself and focus on what you are feeling. But by all means, reach out and get help. And don't go around the circles of a comment like this. Because this commenter doesn't seem to realize how many excuses he likely made for BPD behaviors and how many explanations of what's going on in their heads he either tried to think about, excuse poor behavior from a borderline or worse, or tried to find that out in the echo chamber online, which is a really risky thing. And I'll just close by saying I saw something on Quora today, and I probably will be responding to the question. And this person over there that can't stop abusing the people that they're trying to answer questions to, I don't believe the person has BPD. No indication of that. But somebody asked, I think it was somebody with BPD asking a question about, so they were very much sounding aware. They were asking a question about their ex, I think, left them, and they were asking a very solid question though about something that they actually seem to be gaining awareness with about as a person with BPD that I think should be answered reasonably and not in quote attack mode. And the first thing that this answerer on Quora said was, "Well, what did you do? You must have done something to blah 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 blah." Yeah. Not helpful. That's your echo chamber. Just a little slice from the echo chamber today. Anyway, I just threw that in here to say I'll have something coming on that soon. And in the meantime, I hope that this was helpful to people. And I really don't recommend that you try to get through these relationships, the on off, the endings, the ghostings, the discard, the whatever you're going through, A, by denying your codependency, B, by not taking responsibility for what you might have done. No, not the borderlines abuse, not what they did to you. Please know I'm making a really important delineation there. But what this commenter was on about, all we do is excuse what their poor behavior, their borderline behavior, and what's going on in their heads. We try to make it. Well, yeah, and you've probably done that. But guess what? That's your responsibility. That's why you need therapy. That's why this, among many other reasons, is not a do-it-yourself process of healing and recovery. And having done those things and being responsible for those things and being responsible for your codependency and to heal it and to break a trauma bond now, I want to reiterate, is not me in any way, shape, or form saying you're responsible for what the borderline did. No, you're not at all. But you are responsible even now if you're going back, if you're recycling relationships, that's your choice. The borderline isn't making you do that. That's all I'm trying to say, because a lot of people need to become more aware of that in their own choice making, because people with codependency can fall victim to victim mentality as well. Because you've been victimized by the borderline, but when you're seeking and chasing after them, making excuses for their poor behavior, trying to figure out what's going on in their head, all that focus on them, no matter where you're at right now, all of that's your responsibility as a person with codependency that you need to change, you need to heal, you need to learn how to focus on yourself, you need to work to break the trauma bond. And so, again, no, you're not responsible for what the borderline did at all. But then, what about what you're doing now? What about all the choices you made prior, maybe many of them unconsciously? This is what people with codependency have to come to realize and get into a healing recovery journey process for the healing of and moving forward. And it's a process, takes some time. It isn't exactly the easiest process in life, but it's one of the most rewarding. And I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you.